Florida State at Clemson this weekend, 12 o'clock. There's a lot of talk. There's a lot of speculation for good reason. And tonight I want to have two friends of mine, two friends of the show, and they, quite honestly, they were friends of the Bobby Durkin show a long time ago. And now Mark Rogers brought on Jordan Bowman and Tiger Paul Craven to run the college football, voice of college football, Clemson football channel. And he picked two fine young men to do it. And Gene will be joining us. Tiger Paul Craven will be joining us here momentarily. But I have my buddy Jordan here. Jordan, thanks for joining the show tonight. How's it going, man?
Great, man. Just glad to be back. It's been a minute. I remember we did our first little show, and that was a lot of fun to do right before the season. So I'm glad to be back on, and it feels good.
Well, you braved the waters, showed back up, and I'm going to try to make this painless tonight. So, so the last time we talked, we had all of this hype, excitement, Garrett Riley, the quarterback situation had been figured out. The defense has a who's who on it, preseason NFL, way too early draft pick projections, and then Durham happens. We move forward. We have Florida State absolutely lighting up. I say lighting up. They won dominantly over LSU. Fast forward, we have the game. What are you expecting out of this game?
I'm expecting the unexpected, really. I mean, you already mentioned the debacle that was Durham, and from that point on, I kind of told myself, yeah, this season is just going to be a roller coaster, and I really don't know how to feel. I mean, through 3 weeks, because after the first week, there was a lot of people down on this program, myself included, and you were as well. There just wasn't a whole lot of reason to be optimistic. We had been promised an explosive offense, and all the issues that we had seen over the past 2 seasons were going to be, somehow remedied, and it was just a complete disaster in week 1. And so, the following 2 games, obviously Charleston Southern, the first half of that Charleston Southern game was just more of the same. And you were just like, oh man, this team might not be very good. And then you saw them kind of pull it together in that second half, really put it together and score some points, not shoot themselves in the foot. And then, last week they came out firing pretty early and scored 34 points in that first half and looked like the team they were supposed to for most of that game. So going into it, especially given the result of, on Saturday between Florida State and Boston College, there seems to be some reason to feel like, hey, maybe, Clemson has kind of figured out its issues a little bit at least, and maybe Florida State isn't as good as maybe we propped them up to be because of that week 1 win, or at least maybe they're not as flawless as we thought they would be. So I'm just kind of expecting the unexpected. The line didn't really change much, and it's still I think Florida State's favored by 1.5, basically a pick 'em. So Vegas is still giving Clemson a lot of respect given what they've shown through 3 weeks and what Florida State has shown. So I'm expecting the unexpected, and there have been a lot of storylines that have propped up in the past couple of days from Clemson and Florida State when it comes to injuries, illnesses, graduate students, getting called, that are living in Charleston, getting called to come kick. They haven't kicked in a year. It's you name it. This season is drunk. I really don't know what to say.
That's a good way to put it. It sounds like a story that some guy who's propped up at the SO Club probably should have been cut off 4 drinks ago. He starts making up something, and you're like, "There's no, no, that's Clemson football at this point." Let's talk about Saturday night. This past Saturday night. And people are like, man, let's talk about Florida State game. But to me, this could carry over into this game. And you hit on it. There's been a lot of oddities with both teams. I've had people come on my channel. They've probably come on your channel and tell you, oh, the flu ran through the Florida State team. That's the reason they played so poorly against Boston College. There's rumors about their running back and some stuff that's going on with him. I don't know if any of that is valid. And going back to this past Saturday night, what I was alluding to just a moment ago, we saw Will Shipley really get fired up on the sidelines with CJ Spiller. We can look at the production and see that Phil Maffa, who's a favorite of mine, I love Shipley. I'm not knocking him. I'm just saying Phil Maffa can play football. Actually had a lot of productions on less carries. What happened Saturday night? And does that have any bearing on the future of Will Shipley and Clemson football?
I don't know, and I still reviewed that whole situation myself quite a few times. I've watched the video broadcast. I went and tried to dig up whatever I could on people that might know a little bit more, and it still isn't really clear. I don't know if it was just a simple, hey, I don't know if it was Clemson pulling him at the goal line and he wanted to score. That's been a common narrative because he doesn't have a rushing touchdown on the season. Then others are just like, CJ was just coaching him up and telling him he did something wrong on that previous play, and that it wasn't that big of a deal. I really couldn't tell you. I will say I don't feel like it's going to be something a big deal moving forward, just because I know that Shipley is. This isn't the first time. It's probably the first time it's happened so publicly. But Shipley has been known to be a pretty passionate and fired up type of guy. I mean, CJ talked about it in the offseason. Phil talked about it in the offseason. He's the leader, and he's very passionate, and he's really intense, and that's just kind of how he goes about playing football, and he kind of carries that into his everyday life. So I really don't think it's anything too big as far as moving forward. I think that's just Shipley being Shipley, and as someone that watched him a lot in high school, it doesn't surprise me.
As I look at what information is available to us, if right now you go to Google, please stay on the show, folks. Please stay on the show. You can, if you're on a laptop or something, just open up another tab or whatever. But while you were talking, I Googled just see if anything came out about Will Shipley and CJ Spiller. And the only thing that we can get is there was an exchange. Sweeney at the time said he didn't know what it was about, but he's sure that they'll handle it. The only concern that I have there is we saw Lynn J. Dixon a few years ago leave the program, and you can't help but wonder what went on there. I know that after he left Clemson, he transferred to West Virginia, stayed there for like 2 months, transferred to Tennessee, and then I don't know what he's doing now, and I wish him the very best because Lynn J. Dixon could play football. With that said, I just hope that this is not some type of trend that is happening with the team. But hey, we'll figure that out. It will come out if that is the case. But hopefully all minds are on football. And hey, if a guy drives the ball all the way down to the 1 yard line, unless he's hurt, let him finish. But whatever it is, let's do that, my friend. So I know that we're still waiting on Tiger Paul Craven, but we'll still dive in. Everybody, before I go any farther, just want to tell you, if you're new to the show, hey, subscribe. It's free. It's a great way to support the channel. If you're brand new, or if you're not brand new and you've been here, all the time, you're like, why should I subscribe? It's free and it supports the show. Also, if you want to support the show on a monthly basis, I have a $3 and a $5 tier. You can hit the join button below the video. If you're on an iPhone, you probably will not see that, but hey, do that. And I do appreciate it. I'll be talking about a sponsor for the show here in a moment. So Saturday, the line has moved. The line has moved for the game. Clemson was a 1.5 point underdog. They are now a 2.5 point underdog as of today. Now, for me, that still says to me, it's a toss up. It's in the Valley. Clemson, you could take a guy who was missing fingers on his hand and still use that hand to count how many times Clemson has lost in the Valley recently. When you think about Florida State and what they've done so far, other than beating LSU, which was impressive, game one, what impresses you about Florida State? Like what actually makes you go, hey, we have to, other than them beating LSU, kind of as a conglomerate, what makes you believe in Florida State?
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's a great question, because when you look at this Florida State team on paper and you see all the names, all the guys that, not only they brought back, but guys they brought in the transfer portal, you look and you're like, man, this roster seems loaded. And this team it's no wonder they were the favorite, and, they're the favorites to win the ACC at this point. But then when you watch them play, yeah, they look good. They're good, but it seems like that all the pieces that they have aren't really meshing the way that you thought they would. I mean, like Keon Coleman, who had a phenomenal game against LSU, had 3 targets and 0 catches against Boston College. Johnny Wilson last week had multiple drops, played pretty poorly. Trey Benson didn't have his best game against Boston College on Saturday. Like the guys that you expect Florida State to be leaning on don't seem to be playing all that well. Jared Verse, the highly touted edge rusher, he did not have a particularly great game. So the pieces look really good, but really inconsistent. And I think when you look at some of I don't know how many of you guys are into advanced analytics and all that, it kind of bears into those as well. They haven't been particularly great outside of that LSU game, and really it was only the second half of that LSU game where they just played out of their mind. If you go back and watch that first half, people forget that was a dogfight, and Jordan Travis had he had some errant throws. He didn't play particularly well, and he's kind of been a little up and down this season. And so I think while this Florida State team is really good, there's some reason to think that they're not this juggernaut, and these pieces aren't. I guess the way to put it is the sum of its parts isn't necessarily equal to what the individual parts are, and so that's kind of why I think Clemson has a shot in this game.
Sure. When you look at the stats for this season for Florida State, everybody, including myself, until I look at the stats, who's the leading receiver for Florida State? If I was to ask anybody right now, who's the leading receiver for Florida State, you would automatically go Keon Coleman. Keon Coleman and the reason that everyone says that is because of that incredible game that he had against LSU. Well, if you look at the stats, the leading receiver for Florida State is Johnny Wilson with 11 receptions for 209 yards. If I ask you about Trey Benson, preseason, from what I can remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, preseason All-ACC, you would say, man, he must have, he must be rushing for 300 yards by now, maybe 350. So far, 33 carries, 164 yards. He does have 4 touchdowns. That's very impressive. But at this point of the season, he's the leading running back. As to where Will Shipley, and you could say, well, they played nobody the past 2 weeks. Yeah, you could say that, but Will Shipley still played fantastic against Duke. He has 36 carries for 225 yards. So I agree with you that when you look at the team, you look at what they've done, they're getting a lot of credit, and they should. They're getting a lot of credit for what they did against Florida State. They played Southern Miss, beat their brains in. The only thing that anybody pays attention to with Southern Miss is that Frank Gore Jr. is playing down there, which by the way, might I stop there and say this? When he takes his helmet off, it's like staring at his dad. I'm like freaked out. I'm like, my God.
Yeah, I know.
But, they smashed them. But when it comes to when it came to last week, I say last week, but this past Saturday, I watched the game, and BC lined up, whether Florida State was sick or not, because we're hearing that, and that you have to respect that. Maybe they were looking ahead to Clemson, but when you look at BC and how they lined up with a mobile quarterback, and they really just ran the ball. I mean, they challenged them. It made you kind of go, is this the way we beat them? Is this the way that we line up and go after them? So that's a great question in itself. We talked about going to Charleston, South Carolina, and getting a kicker. Let's talk about that. And we've already seen some questionable things happen in the kicking game. The blocked kick at Duke, where, I mean, if you go back and you look at that lineup, you can tell that kick's about to get blocked. It's like I'm standing there going, was there not even a GA, which I know a grad assistant has the say of a styrofoam cup on the sideline. Yeah. But you wonder if a GA didn't nudge somebody and go, that's about to get blocked, just to try to, that happened. But getting a kicker at the last second, how do you feel about that considering, he hadn't kicked in forever?
Man, it's just kind of one of those things. I'm like, it can't get any worse. And well, let me
yeah.
I've said that too many times before about other parts of this program, and it's proven me wrong. But it really can't. I just, when you watch these past 3 games, it's just the inconsistency. Every time you saw Robert Gunn getting ready to line up for a kick, you were just like, oh man, this is going to be, even if he makes it, it's going to look ugly. And when you're a team that's struggling to find its identity, like Clemson is right now, and when you're about to face a team where every single point counts, you got to do something, because it's clear that while Robert Gunn is really talented, he hit from 60 yards, 70 yards in spring at one, probably not 70, but 60 yards in spring. He's really talented. He was one of the top kickers in his class. But it's clear there's something mental going on, and it's hurting the team. And so, you could tell that Dabo during the FAU game, you could tell he was kind of ready to make a switch. And he even said, he was like, I was close to throwing Aiden Swanson out there and making him kick. So you got to do something. And so Jonathan White's, I think that's how you pronounce his last name. He's a guy that he hasn't kicked in over a year, but the staff has seen him kick, and they know that he can kick at least from a respectable distance. And I know the plan is for him to kick, all kicks below, 40 or 35 yards. You got to do something, because you have to make the layups. If you're not making the layups against Florida State, you're losing the game. That's what it is, because Florida State's going to be able to, they're going to score some points, and you have to be able to match that. And you can't leave any points on the board.
What makes me feel better about it, even though there's uncertainty, it reminds me of Mike Leach, the infamous holding a tryout for just anybody who can kick the football. And a guy who was sitting in the stands, from what I can remember the week before, is now the kicker for the football team. With that said, that does make me feel better that he would be willing to do that, just because it is so bad. And also think about this. BT Potter was just so incredible. Just when he did a kickoff, it was a touchback. My God, they had to wipe off the white paint from the back of the end zone off the football every time, because the guy just had a leg. You could trust him. So this is just everything leading up to this Florida State game. There's questions right now about Jordan Travis's arm injury. What's going on with him? How effective he's going to be this week. If you have a quarterback who's been smacked around, and when he got tackled Saturday and he got injured, I was sitting there going, I was like, whoa, hold, something just happened there. This guy got really messed up. If he can't get the ball out, adequately, Why wouldn't you load up the box and just go after the guy and say, dude, I could care less if you have Coleman, Jaheim Bell, prime time in his day out there. If you can't get the ball to him, if your throws are off, or if you're hurting, I'd load up the box and come after him. What do you think about Jordan Travis at this time with the injury? What would you do, providing it is actually bad enough to go after him?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that's really interesting about Florida State is even before the Jordan Travis injury, it seemed like they were hesitant to use him in the run game. I don't know what has been, but watching Florida State through these first 3 weeks, Jordan Travis hasn't been the threat with his legs, and not because he's not a threat with his legs. It seems like there's a lack of willingness to use his legs as a big part of the offense. And by virtue, I don't think they've ran the ball as well as maybe we thought. We talked about Trey Benson and his production, and it's been fine, but he hasn't really had that wow performance or any of those wow performances he had last year. So I mean, if you look at Clemson's plan, defensively going into this game, why wouldn't you go and send pressure? Because it seems like he's not willing to use his legs as a threat. And I mean, I think Jordan Travis has improved a ton year over year as a passer, but he's still limited. He doesn't have a particularly great arm. He's not a particularly talented guy when it comes to arm talent. He makes, the throws they need him to make, but he's not that proficient. And I think that if you can make Florida State's offense really one-dimensional and they have to just throw the ball around, I think that's in your favor, because I don't think they're going to hit every single one of them. And with some of the inconsistencies they've had at wide receiver, I mean, Johnny Wilson has struggled with drops. Keon Coleman has gone stretches where he's been missing. Jaheim Bell, I think he got hurt on Saturday too. So I mean, his availability is kind of in question as well. So a lot of those weapons are kind of in flux right now. So I don't see why you wouldn't go after them. I think it's especially with how limited Jordan Travis is with the injury, and they're going to be cautious with him because there's still a lot of season left to go. This is one of those games where it's like, well, we need to make sure that Jordan Travis makes it to the end of this game so we can play the rest of our games.
Mike Norvell said after the game, hey, he's okay. He's just a little banged up. If I was Clemson, I'd pin my ears back. I'd lock down on the wide receivers. And just tell the guys, look, we have 2 grad students in the secondary. We have a couple of guys here that can play corner, and safety. Let's pull what Georgia did to TCU. We're going to pin our ears back. We're going to go after the quarterback, and we're going to make them get open. And if you get burned, then you'll make the adjustment. That's what I do. But coming in and playing, I don't want to say scared, but cautious, knowing that these guys are banged up, I would definitely go after them and try to smack them around early, just to kind of get them off guard. They're like, holy crap, we beat LSU. This team lost to Duke by 3 touchdowns. I mean, granted, Clemson passed and ran for 200 yards, had 12 more first downs, had 1 penalty for 5 yards, had the ball for 10 or 11 minutes more than Duke. The stat says Clemson won that football game. In reality, they lost by 3 touchdowns. But what I'm saying by all of that, Clemson can move the football. And that is one thing I'm having to pump my brakes on a little bit. But you can't turn over the ball like they have, especially against Florida State team. With that said, they could get more physical. Offensive line for Clemson. There's a lot of questions there. I'm not going. Unfortunately, you have to say the offensive line, but there's individuals who's probably playing better than others. What are you seeing with this unit? They've already been criticized. Georgia Southern had penetration at certain areas. Tristan Lee got knocked on his butt by one of those guys. What do you think's going through their head going into this Florida State game? Because that's kind of nutty. And before I go there, Tiger Paul Craven has been able to join us. Hey, Tiger Paul Craven, thanks for hopping on, my man.
Hey,
Hey, buddy.
Thank you for having me, man. Sorry I'm late. Daughter softball practice ran a little long for me tonight, but here I am, and I'm happy to be on the Not Bobby Durkin show. Thanks for having me, man.
Oh, dude, glad, and I'm always family first, man. I'm family first. I'm glad you're at the daughter's softball practice versus, hey baby, I gotta go. I gotta be on this guy's show. Be good. I'm glad you're not doing that. So
Yeah.
So
no.
I just asked this question to Jordan. And Jordan, you can still go ahead and answer. We've talked about some odd things, the oddities. Just to recap for anybody who's joining us right now, we talked about the oddities of this game. That they're only a 2.5-point favorite over Clemson. Clemson barely loses ever in the Valley. Sickness has possibly went through the Florida State camp. We have Spiller and Shipley getting into it on the sidelines. We have Dabo calling up Charleston, South Carolina to get a grad student to come up and kick. There's a lot of craziness that is going on. We know that Norvell and Sweeney really, I'm not going to say that they have bad blood, but they're not besties. Let's talk about the offensive line. And you were coming on as soon as I was talking about this. So I'll pose this to both of you. Jordan, you can go ahead since I asked a question, but I'll restate it to you, Tiger Paul Craven. Offensive line has had its moments to where you're sitting there scratching your head going, am I watching some small school who has no access to talent or no recruiting budget or no, and then they'll come around and they'll do something solid. What do you think the mindset of the offensive line is this week?
I think the number one thing is you need to figure out who's going to be the guys at tackle. I know that we all knew that it was kind of in flux going into the season, and there was a chance. It was like, okay, we got Tristan Lay and Colin Sadler. They're kind of competing for left tackle and all of that. And then Tristan Lay trots out, and he's been the starter for the last few games. But then they put in Colin Sadler. He had some really nice moments, and so there's kind of that situation there. But in general, the tackle play has not been very good through 3 games. And when you're facing a team like Florida State, it's about the last place on the offensive line. You want to have issues at because of how good Jared Verse and Patrick Payton are. And I think the mindset needs to be you have to correct all the mistakes, and or at least a good majority of the mistakes we've seen through 3 weeks, because the tackle play has been really, really up and down. And you just, like I said, you just can't afford to do that. And Dabo has talked all offseason about how he feels like this offensive line has, 8, 9, I don't know what number, 7, 8 starters. I get what he's trying to say, but when you watch this group play, it kind of feels more like this team has 3 really foundational pieces on the offensive line, that being Will Putnam, Marcus Tate, and Walker Parks. And then everybody else, there's this next tier of guys that have potential and can all play and have moments where they look really good, but there's still a lot of room for, there's still a lot of room to change up the lineup and stuff like that. And so it kind of shows in how they play. It's just really up and down. We haven't really gotten that consistent play. So I think the mentality needs to be, let's figure out who our 5 is going to be and stick with it.
Yeah, Jordan, I think that makes a lot of sense. And to answer your question, Bobby, I think this offensive line should head into this week feeling challenged. That's the word that really does come to mind for me for this offensive line, is they should feel challenged. Because at the end of the day, they are going to see a defensive line that is going to come after Cade Klubnik consistently. They are going to try to pressure him into making bad decisions, which he's done thus far this year, although he started cleaning it up, the past couple weeks. He's looked a little better at times, but he's still making some of those ill-advised throws, especially when he's under pressure. So this offensive line should feel challenged this week. This is time to man up and be about what you talk about. This offensive line was touted by Dabo Swinney. They were touted by the rest of the Clemson staff heading into this season, coming out of fall camp. We were told that we had 8, 9, 10 guys that could come out here and play quote unquote winning football. Okay. So week 4, Florida State, this is the week. Okay. This is the week you got to show up and play winning football. You got guys like Jared Verse and other guys along the Florida State line, right, that are going to straight up challenge you this week. They're going to pin their ears back. They're going to come after Cade, and they're going to dare Cade to beat them with his decision-making, because it has not been as consistent as we would like it to be to this point in the season, right? So this offensive line has to figure it out. And I agree a lot with Jordan Bowman. We have our three interior guys. They are some of the most consistent guys that we have along the offensive line. They have graded out really well. But what has been an issue for this offensive line this season? Most notably, it has been pass protection, specifically on the edges. And I'm even talking about the right tackle position, right? Even a guy that started all of last season. He has not started the season out very well in Blake Miller. He has not started this season out very well. Although he has rebounded a little bit from early woes this season, it has not been the greatest of starts for him, right? And then you think about a Tristan Lee, Colin Sadler, like those dudes, they got to bring it this week. They got to get it together. It specifically at the tackle position. I think the interior of our offensive line will perform adequately in this game, but it's really going to be the tale of what the tackles are able to do, both in run blocking and then more specifically pass blocking, keeping a cleaner pocket for Cade. Because at the end of the day, you know, when you make mistakes as a quarterback like Cade, they're magnified to the nth degree, right? Because everybody's watching the quarterback. Even Joe Blow on the couch at home, like some of us who know nothing about college football, right? They look at the quarterback and they're like, oh, man, that was a terrible play by the quarterback. But what they don't understand is protection breakdown and things like that cause those poor decisions, when things really break down and protection is not what it's supposed to be. So the running backs staying in on pass pro, the tackles this week are going to really lay the foundation for how productive this Clemson offense can be against this Florida State defense, because they're going to come. And with that said, I think there are plays to be made against this Florida State secondary. They are vulnerable in the secondary. We saw it last week against Boston College. I mean, they had a freshman quarterback out there carving up their secondary like it was his job. Okay, so there are going to be plays to be made in the secondary, especially with the talent that Clemson has. Because guess what? I don't know if you know this, Clemson's far more talented than Boston College. So if Boston College can exploit the secondary like they did, why can't Clemson? Okay, but it's going to start on the offensive line of scrimmage. It's going to start on both lines of scrimmage, just like it does in every single college football game. And if we cannot figure it out at tackle and really give Cade the time to go through his progressions, and we've said that Cade, hey, he gets locked on receivers early on. He's done a little bit better of going through his progressions. But guess what? If he doesn't have time to go through his progressions, then it really doesn't matter. So it's really going to be on the tackles, and this offensive line should feel challenged this week. They should come out with an attitude to really dominate the line of scrimmage and show what they are, because we're not untalented at offensive line. I know a lot of people sit here and say, offensive line has been one of those consistent things at Clemson that has been a shortcoming. But if you look at our past 2 recruiting cycles at offensive line, we do not have a lack of talent at offensive line, at least as far as the star rating goes. So we got to see it on the field.
But before I go any further, Parker Henderson points out that you do look like Luke Combs.
Thank you.
And
I've heard that about 1 billion times.
Yeah, yeah. It's
If
Yeah,
only I could sing like Luke Combs, then maybe
You
I'd have
probably
a
wouldn't
little
be
bit
doing
more
this
money.
right now.
Yeah, I probably
Yeah.
wouldn't be doing this. I'd be making a little bit more money.
just a few dollars.
I'd probably be down on the sideline with the Tigers instead of on YouTube talking about the Tigers.
Yeah, you would. You would. Hey, everybody, if you're joining here tonight, I've got a bunch of people in here. Thank you so much for joining me. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe. It's free. It's free. So you can subscribe to the channel. Also, if you want to support on a monthly basis, my friends, you can do that for a $2 or $3, a $3 or $5 tier. I can't speak. Who cares? There's a join button below the video. Unless you're on an iPhone, you have to do it somewhere else. Also, I want to talk about a sponsor that I have for this show, and I'm very excited about this. And we're going to keep talking about Clemson football. 4Putt Carts is a beverage cart service for golf courses. Whether you have a cart service or you don't have a cart service, you're like, not Bobby, what are you talking about? Well, if you don't have a cart service, you need to hire these guys. They're fantastic. In fact, today they worked a celebrity golf tournament. So the city of Atlanta is already working with them. The city of Macon's already working with them. You're like, whoa, hold on. That sounds like it's all Georgia. No, they'll go anywhere in the Southeast. And also, just throwing this out there, if you do have cart service, but you have a tournament, everything's going to be you're going to be overwhelmed. You don't want golfers sitting around going, man, I'm never coming back here again. I mean, I'm over here on hole, 4. I sure would like to have a drink right now, or maybe some snacks. Oh, and then all of a sudden, because you hired them, they're there. And people are happy and want to come back and peruse your events. 4Putt Carts, reach out to me. I can get you their information. I've also got to put their new website link below the description. But 4Putt Carts, thank you so much for sponsoring the show. So Clemson is a 2.5-point underdog, which is basically, in the betting world, it's a toss-up. Now, we've talked about this already. Go ahead.
Did it not open up as a 1.5-point favorite? Is it now a 2.5?
It opened up at 1.5, and now it's at a 2.5-point favorite.
Okay, all right.
But when we look at that, we think about how difficult it is to win at Clemson. It's very difficult to win there. The Valley's going to be lit up. Even on a 12 o'clock game, that place is going to be popping. The eyes of the nation will still be paying attention to this game. I know Ohio State at Notre Dame, that's a big game. It's going to be a fantastic matchup, potential playoff implications there. But the people who really love college football is going to be watching this game, because Clemson has the chance to say, look, what happened in Durham, it was bad, but we still moved the football. We dominated on so many different levels, but we just made dumb mistakes. We fixed that. What do you think? And I'll give both of you this question. Offensive, defensive side of the ball, what do you think we have to see from Clemson to overcome? And I know some of these, and I'm not looking for magical answers here, because that Duke game, there was no magical answer. It was, don't turn over the football and score. That's basically it. You're moving the ball like crazy, score. So I'm not looking for a magical answer. What do we need to see from Clemson on the defensive and offensive side of the ball to beat Florida State?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I guess I'll start with the offensive side of the ball, because that's the group that we've all been hyper-focused on, just through 3 weeks. Defense has played really well. But offensively, I think, first and foremost, I think you have to have the most complete game you've played so far. And that sounds pretty obvious, but this offense has been really, really balanced. But in both phases, they've had moments where they've lacked consistency. So I think the receivers especially are going to have the best game they've had all year. You're gonna need your guys, Bo Collins, Antonio Williams, Tyler Brown. Now I feel comfortable saying, those guys really need to be the focal point, and they really have to have big games, because this FSU secondary, while they're talented, it's a talented group. They've had their moments where they haven't looked great, but that's a talented group. But they can't. You're going to have to be able to win your matchups one-on-one, and that Florida State defense is going to be aggressive. So Cade, especially, is going to have to be able to, is going to have to be accurate. He's going to have to be quick with his decision making, his reads, and you're kind of seeing him be more comfortable. And if Cade has that look of being comfortable, I think Clemson will be okay, and they'll be able to move the ball and punch it in, score. Don't just don't do a Tennessee or a Duke. Let's actually put the ball in the end zone. But yeah, you're going to need, because Florida State is going to try to key in on the run. They know what Clemson does well. They know what Clemson wants to be. It's a run first offense, so you have to keep them honest. And then defensively, it really is just play your game, and your corners are going to have to win one-on-ones. They're going to have to win one-on-ones. And that just has to happen. And you have to get pressure with your front four. And I think those are pretty universal keys to any game, but especially this one. And getting pressure on Jordan Travis, making him uncomfortable. That's the way to get that offense out of sync and out of rhythm. Because when Mike Norvell is a brilliant play caller, when that offense is humming and when they're ahead of schedule, they're really, really tough to stop. So getting them behind the chains on early downs, especially, I think is going to be a key.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start on the defensive side of the ball for the Tigers, and really it's going to start with the pass rush. You have to affect Jordan Travis in the pocket. You have to. He's coming off of last week. He had that shoulder injury, and though I don't wish any injury on any player in college football, I hope he is 100% healthy for this Clemson game, and that shoulder affects him absolutely zero. But if I was a Florida State fan and coming out of last week, flush the Boston College game, it probably means nothing when it comes to this Clemson game, to be completely honest. But the one thing that does matter is that shoulder injury to a non-throwing shoulder, albeit, is that going to affect Jordan Travis? And the reason that I bring that up is it seemed to not affect him in the second half when it came to pushing the ball down the field and throwing the ball very accurately, which we know Jordan Travis can do. However, this game is going to come down. This is not – I don't see a blowout on any side of this game. I really don't. So at a certain point in this game, Jordan Travis is going to have to go get it with his legs. Is he going to feel comfortable enough with that shoulder? Is that shoulder healthy enough that he can go get those tough yards when it's going to matter in this game, third, fourth quarter type deals, right? That's one question that I have, right? So the defensive line is going to have to get consistent pressure against Jordan Travis and make him uncomfortable in the pocket. The defensive backs, they're going to be on islands, okay? Because first and foremost, Florida State has way too many weapons. You talk about Johnny Wilson, right? This dude is 6'7". He is a matchup nightmare against, two corners on him at a time, much less one. He is a matchup nightmare. Then you got Jaheim Bell, transfer out of South Carolina, right? He's a weapon when it comes to pass catching, right? Keon Coleman, transfer out of Michigan State, 6'4", right? Big-time wide receiver. You've already seen his effect on the Florida State offense, right? And then Trey Benson out of the backfield, he can absolutely run the ball. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. And I've already mentioned Jordan Travis and his ability to push the ball down the field. And he's really a two-way quarterback, right? He can hurt you with his legs. He can hurt you with his arm. The big thing about Jordan Travis is he going to have that secondary running ability, which really makes Jordan Travis the quarterback that he is and truly special. Because without that, if Clemson can make Jordan Travis one-dimensional, then they can pin their ears back and they can tee off on him if he's not comfortable running the ball, right? Because we've seen quarterbacks, even this year. You go back to last year, it was the same case, but especially early in this year, right? Quarterbacks escaping the pocket when our defensive linemen get out of their rushing lanes, when we don't set the edge, running quarterbacks that can get yards with their legs have hurt the Tigers. So if he's not able to do that, that takes a certain dimension away from this Florida State offense. But they got weapons all over the field. So it's really going to be a test for this secondary. And this front seven, they got to pin their ears back. They got to get after Jordan Travis. They got to get after. They got to limit their ability to run the ball. They got to make them a one-dimensional offense, and those corners got to hold up. And the defensive line is going to have to help the corners by getting to Jordan Travis early and often. Now, you've seen Clemson's defense thus far this season. They've gotten pressure on quarterbacks, but we don't have a lot of sacks. They're not finishing. Even when they get dudes wrapped up, you go back to Devin Leary, week 1, right? Got him wrapped up for a loss. What did it turn into? A 50-yard touchdown, right? That was kind of the backbreaker for that game that busted it wide open for Duke. Okay? So they got to get quarterbacks to the ground. They got to finish that pass rush that they've been getting because they've been pressuring quarterbacks, but they haven't been finishing with sacks. So that's going to be a key point for the defense. Switching gears to the offense, they're going to have to stay ahead of the chains. This Clemson offense does not operate well when they're in 3rd and long. Cade sits back there too long. The offensive line has not been able to hold up in pass protection, and this Florida State defensive line will tee off on this offensive line if we're consistently at 3rd and long. It will be a long night for the Clemson offense if we are consistently at 3rd and long. So we're going to have to stay on schedule as an offense. We're going to have to get 3-4 yards on first down in order to keep our playbook wide open so that we can manipulate the coverage, we can manipulate the defense. We need to get Jake Brenningstool involved. He's been running lazy routes early in the season. He's got to be better. He's got to become a factor downfield in the passing game. We lost Cole Turner this week. Obviously, he's got 3 torn abductor muscles. We don't have him anymore. So I look to Adam Randall. It's kind of gut check time for him as well. I think he's still struggling with maybe some mental demons because of that injury that he suffered. Maybe not trusting his knee as much as he needs to. But Bo Collins is going to have a big day. Antonio Williams is going to have a big day. Tyler Brown is going to have to show up and have a big day. They're going to have to create separation. There are plays to be made in this secondary versus Florida State, but the offensive line really is going to have to step up and protect Cade. We're going to have to, attack with the running game. But more importantly, these wide receivers are going to have to protect and block on the perimeter. And we're going to have to stay on schedule as an offense if we hope to be successful in this game against Florida State.
This comment right here, SC Country, and by the way, there's some great comments in this chat section. So if anybody's in here, I'm not excluding you. Try to put them up there. But this one really sums up what really all 3 of us has said. And Tiger Paul Craven, I can't remember if I said this before you joined or after you joined. That Clemson front 7 has got to be vicious. Yes, SC Country, they have to be. And for me, I look at what Georgia did to TCU in the national championship. They looked at their own offensive coordinator and said, hey, if we get in a shootout, Monken, do you think you and your boys can hang with that? Oh, yeah, go for it. Georgia pinned their ears back, went after them, hit them so hard consistently that TCU was like, what just happened to me? Mm-hmm. And before you know it, the game was over. Now, I'm not calling that for Florida State. What I'm saying is Clemson needs to be vicious and make Jordan Travis prove that you're going to have to respect me as a passer and that I can actually get the ball out. But if Clemson plays this, we're not so sure what they're going to do, so we're just going to try to play it safe. They get picked apart. And it's a crazy, it could be a crazy night, but I agree with both of you there. Chase Henderson mentioned just a little bit ago, and I put up I put it up. We were talking about Cade, and I was going to say that, Chase, and I'm not just saying that because you said it. Maybe I am, but no, I agree with you 100%. If you know they're coming for Cade, roll the flipping pocket, move him. Let's use this thing. The guy can run. He does have mobility. Folks, if you're joining here today, I have Tiger Paul Craven and Jordan Bowman from the Mark Rogers Voice of College Football Clemson channel. Go check these guys out. They do a fantastic job. They've been a friend of the Bobby Durkin show. And, of course, now they're on the Not Bobby Durkin show, which I should do a show with y'all as Bobby on the other channel. That's That's the only time I've seen Mark frazzled.
Yeah.
That's the only time.
That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Sure.
It is nuts. Have some of the and folks, I'm going to give some shout outs to a few people, and then we're going to get right back into college or Clemson football here. Grafnar in here is a member of the Not Bobby Durkins channel. John Setton, thank you so much, my friend, for being a member of the Not Bobby Durkins channel. Parker Henderson is a member, as well as Chase Henderson. Chase, I'm trying to find you in here. I just had you up here. Chase is a member of the Not Bobby Durkins channel. Grafnar, my friend, I see you in there. Folks, I have 100 people in here right now. If you haven't subscribed, it's free. Please support the channel, especially if you watch all the time. It really does help the channel. You can support the channel on a monthly basis. A $3 or $5 tier, and you're like, what's the difference? Nothing. It's just $3 or $5. You won't even notice it. For $5, I'm not going to come over and try to explain to you why your wife has a boyfriend. Not going to do it. So, but also, Four Putt Carts, who is sponsoring the show, their beverage cart services for golf courts, whether you have cart service or not. Four Putt Carts, you still need to reach out to them, especially tournament time. You need to get them out there. They're going to make those golfers say good things about you, and as well as just special events. So Four Putt Carts, you can reach out to me, and I'm going to be placing their website in the video description below. The oddities with this Clemson-Florida State game. Florida State, I remember the days when Clemson couldn't even dream about beating Florida State. I'll never forget the year in I think it was 1994. Clemson lost 17-0 to Florida State. And I was like, wow, we did so much better than the 57-0 loss last year. This is great. Clemson has won and won and won. Florida State has went through what they've went through. Now they're back. The nation's paying attention to this game. What happens if Clemson loses this ball game Saturday? And I'm not even saying that they get blown out by 4 touchdowns. But let's just say that it's a pretty dominating win, that Clemson looks kind of out of it. What do you think happens to Clemson football if they lose this game by 2 touchdowns or more?
Yeah, that's going to be there's going to be some tough questions asked. I mean, there already were tough questions asked after the Duke game, but especially now, because as much as we were upset about how the Duke game played out, there were ways to kind of, there was some mental gymnastics that could be done about that game and be like, well, it was week 1, it was kind of a fluky result, but we still have this whole season ahead of us, and we have a chance to be really good. And given the last 2 weeks where it seems like they've grown each week, and they seem to start to be becoming more of a cohesive football team, and then Florida State has, they had their moment against Boston College where they didn't look that great. I think a lot of Clemson fans are expecting a competitive game, even if they don't expect to win it. And so if Florida State is the wins pretty convincingly, there has to be that reset of expectations again. And having to do that twice in a season is pretty rough, because it's like, oh man, you got my hopes up before the season, you disappointed me, then my hopes got up again, then you disappointed me again, even worse. And I think the biggest thing is that it'll finally feel real that, hey, Clemson is not the number 1 program in this conference anymore. I think that's really the biggest thing, because, as much as hype as Florida State has gotten in the offseason, it was still, well, Clemson is still the top dog until proven otherwise. Mm-hmm. If Florida State proves otherwise, then it's kind of official, and it'll be official in a lot of people's mind. Now, that doesn't mean that Clemson can't recover from it. Doesn't mean that the season is lost if they lose this game, and they can still get better and be a good football team. But it does signal kind of a reset of expectations, and kind of the nail in the coffin as far as Clemson is not they're not the top program in the ACC anymore.
Yeah, I completely agree, Jordan. If this is anything close to reminiscent of 2013, Florida State versus
you
Clemson.
didn't have to bring it up.
I know I didn't have to bring it up, but that beatdown that Clemson took in the Valley. Now, granted, I am not comparing this Florida State team to anything close to what that Florida State team was in 2013, because I don't think that's the case, nor do I think this will be a large victory for either team that comes out on top. If Clemson comes out on top, I think it's going to be a close game. If Florida State comes out on top in this game, I truly do think it's going to be a close game. But, the hypothetical question, if Florida State comes out there and completely lowers the boom and blows the doors off the Tigers in Death Valley come Saturday at noon, this will be kind of the changing of the guard. It will feel like the changing of the guard in the ACC again, right? Going back from Clemson back to Florida State, right? That will be one of the things it feels like. The other thing I think it will magnify the questions of philosophy of this program and where it's headed, and also the coaching staff of this program. And I'm not talking about Dabo Swinney. I'm not talking about changing head coaches, okay? So pump the brakes on that. But I think it will magnify some assistant coaches on this staff that have already been questioned. It will just amplify those questions that have already started to be asked because of shortcomings of this very, very, very talented Clemson roster. Because there's no one out there that can convince me that Clemson has a talent problem currently. Now, if we keep, trending in the direction of a 2021 and 2022 type seasons, we could start having a talent problem at Clemson. But currently on the roster, if you look at Clemson's roster, we do not have a talent problem yet. I think we may have a development problem on the roster. And that's not players, that's coaches. Again, so I think something like that would magnify the questions of some of these coaches, and are they worthy of the position that they currently hold?
Slim Shady Canes, thank you so much, my old friend, my the truck driver who's all over the world.
Yes, sir.
From Memphis. Slim. He says, look, 101st in total day and 33 in total offense. Numbers don't lie, and they say FSU is overhyped. Facts don't care about your feelings. First, Slim Shady, I'm glad you're here, buddy. Thank you for supporting the show. You didn't have to do that, but I will take your $5. I will. Okay. I mean, after YouTube takes their 30%, I'm going to take your $5. No, thank you for supporting the channel. Hey, I get what you're saying, Slim, and Tiger Paul Craven, Jordan. I'm going to come back to that. But I think right now for Clemson, what they just said, and as Clemson fans, what we have seen, this game means this is the first good team that Clemson has played since playing in Durham. And to me, there's a lot riding on this game emotionally for both teams because FSU can't get over the hump. The hump has been established, and the hump has been there for not quite a decade, but getting close.
Yep.
And to beat Clemson would put them over the hump. So I think they're actually going to bring it. Clemson, there's a lot of questions that surrounding them. So I get what you're saying about the numbers, and I don't disagree. I'm a numbers guy myself. I'm a guy who looks at all those aspects when it comes to rankings and production, and I agree with you 100%. I just think where both programs are at, one's fighting to try to keep dominance, another one is trying to attain it. This game could get really brutal on both sides. I'm not talking about a blowout. I'm talking about both of these guys could be scrapping for a game. But hey, and there he goes. The number says Miami will be more of a challenge. Maybe so. We will see. We will see. Yeah. Let's talk about this. Clemson wins the ball game. Let's say Clemson wins this ball game by 10 points. They just win the ball game, but let's have a little fun here. Clemson wins by 2 touchdowns, 10 points or something like that. The defense comes out, they slap some people around, and then suddenly, what do we have?
Well, I think it would certainly satisfy, a good portion of the fan base for sure. Um, it reestablishes Clemson, on the national radar, because it seems like everyone is just kind of, since that Duke game, everyone's just kind of put them out of their mind. They're not even ranked anymore. That would certainly change if they were to win that game, this game.
Might get us up to 24, maybe.
But I think it'll do something in the same way that a loss would create a lot of, would magnify a lot of questions. A win would quell at least some of the questions. Now, I think that's a double-edged sword, because I think even if Clemson wins this game, the win doesn't significantly change the program in a super meaningful way. It changes the perception, and that's great. That matters a ton. But there's still some things that we as Clemson, and we've all three of us have talked about it. There are things that we want to see Clemson do in order to stay competitive. Now, that again, it might be a double-edged sword, because Dabo has had his way of doing things, and a win like this would perception-wise validate a lot of what he's done. And does that mean that problems that are still within the program go unaddressed? Does stuff like that happen? Is Dabo going to be more resistant to the transfer portal? Because hey, the opponent I just faced has leveraged the transfer portal better than anybody in the country, and my team just beat them.
Yep.
I think there's going to be some questions about that, and Dabo might retreat back a little bit on how, he's kind of been softening his stance over the years, but he might feel a little bit more validated in doing things the way he's been doing it. And I don't know how I feel about that, but I would be happy with a win. I want Clemson to win this game, but I do think that's something to consider. But I think most importantly, it does change the perception. A Clemson win would change the perception of the program. It puts them right back into the conversation of the playoffs, the ACC, not even just the playoffs, the ACC championship.
Yeah.
And you feel a lot better moving forward in your schedule. It's we just beat the team that everyone thinks is the best team on our schedule. There could be a couple of teams a little farther down the road that might have something to say about that. But you feel good moving forward, because this seemed to be our toughest test, and we handled it. We feel like this team can do anything now.
Yeah, I mean, a Clemson win would mean that this team is resilient, right? This team has the capability of having a really poor game in Duke, in Durham, North Carolina, and then rebounding, having a couple hiccups the next two games against inferior talent, and then going out there and truly executing and solidly beating one of the quote-unquote top teams in the country right now, right? That's what it would mean. It would change national perception for the Clemson program. That would be what it would immediately do if you're looking from a national sports media standpoint, right? It would change the perception of the Clemson program. But more importantly, it would put us back in the hunt for the ACC championship right now. Because if you think about it, if Clemson loses to Florida State on Saturday, we really get put behind the eight ball when it comes to just our conference. If we lose on Saturday, we need Duke to lose 3 ACC games just to get in. And that's just talking about Duke. That's not talking about the rest of the teams in the conference that could have really good schedules. Miami, North Carolina, other teams that could have really good, schedules or really good records in the ACC. So this is really a must win for the Tigers. It really is. If their hopes of an ACC championships berth is going to stay alive, they really do need this game. But both teams are going to come in motivated. I don't think it's earth-shattering either way for Clemson as a program. I think it will feel that way. If it goes a big win or a big loss, it will feel that it's earth-shattering either way, but I really don't think it truly is, right? I don't think Clemson's football program is that frail. I don't think they're quite to that point where one game is going to sway it one way or the other. And I think it's interesting some of the points that you bring up, Jordan. Would that kind of make Dabo Swinney more bullish on his stance on the transfer portal and things like that? I think it could. But I also think that at least I don't know that I think that. I don't know Dabo Swinney personally, obviously. But I would hope that he is smarter than that, and he's seeing the writing on the wall when it comes to the transfer portal and the change in college football. I truly do think that he sees it. I truly do think that he is aware enough to know that the status quo, or the thing that worked 5 years ago, isn't going to work in today's college football. I would hope, and I believe right now that he is smart enough to know that. So I don't think that'll happen, although I think that is definitely a possibility.
Parker Henderson, thank you so much for supporting the channel. $5. Super thanks. I appreciate it. He said, join the NBD, the Not Bobby Durkins family. It's $3. It's cheaper than this super chat. Pull out your computer and just do it. Go Tigers. Parker, thank you for, as always. And you didn't even have to do that. He super chatted.
Cheaper than a gallon of gas. Look at that.
It is. So thank you for supporting the channel. He's a member and supported the channel. So thank you for doing that, my friend. Big Red makes a really good comment down here, and there's a lot of truth in this. Being good for so long can be bad for Clemson in this game. If you win, you're supposed to win. If you lose, though, you're a dumpster fire. It's a no-win situation. Jordan, what you talked about, Swinney being emboldened. There are things that Swinney does need to change. His success in the national championships, and I know I'm going to catch a lot of flack for this, but it's just another day. Saban had to change. Saban had to change his offensive model. Saban has went through more coordinators than most people will go through underwear in a week. And he continues to win. He continues to adapt. He continues to approach things differently. And in the comments section, I posted something that Saban said. And listen, love or hate Saban, the guy has 7 national championships. He has 7 national championships. People are begging God or anything they worship or even think could exist that this man is finally falling apart. That's how dominant he is. But he made this comment on being criticized about losing to Texas. People get upset that we get criticized. But why wouldn't we get criticized if we don't play well? People call me, Saban, talking about people calling him and say, man, this guy's a jerk for saying this about you. No, he really isn't. It's right. We didn't play good. I'm responsible for that. Folks, love Saban or hate Saban, that is the mantra for a head coach, for a leader of a company, for a leader of a country. Folks, that if you are in charge, you're the head man, you're the head honcho. There's tons of people around you who are in your profession and outside of your profession who would love to have the opportunity that you have. You have it. You're not going to make excuses. You make the decisions. Swinney was making the decisions and had the ship going in the right direction. 6 consecutive playoffs. Unbelievable. Wins 2 national championships. There's a chance he could have won at least one more with that 45-40 loss with Deshaun Watson. Yep. We just got out coached by LSU. That was not a talent issue. As great as they were, we were up 17-7 early on. So my point in saying all of that is we've seen this slide that's happened, and we're getting farther and farther away from those championship years. You wonder if he wins, is he going to be like, oh yeah, see, we're fine. All of y'all calm down. Yeah. You would hope that he wouldn't. At the same time, what happens if he gets blown? I don't know. It will be interesting to see the maturation of this team and Dabo Swinney. Hey, Halo has become a YouTube member. Thank you for supporting, my friend. Thank you so much for supporting the Not Bobby Durkins channel. I really do appreciate it. And folks, anybody who has joined the channel, supported it, I just want to tell you, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. I'm just a guy in his bonus room who makes videos. And I know I have a sponsor, but that sponsor doesn't demand I say and not say certain things, or else I wouldn't have them as a sponsor. Because that's why a lot of people, well, they just don't tell the truth. So there we go. Let's talk about a few more things. If y'all need to go, we need to go. I know that, that we all have lives outside of this. So this video has been going on for about 1 hour and 10 minutes. We've talked about the talent. Talent is not an issue at Clemson. I'm going to tell everybody that once and for all. Talent is not an issue at Clemson. Josh Pate, with the late kick with Josh Pate, pulled up that fact. Even before all of this went on, he had actually a schematic about 2 months before this where he broke down the most talented teams by blue chip status in college football, and Clemson was ranked like number 4. Yep. So around 54 5-star players. The law of numbers says you're going to have a couple of duds in there. But the law of numbers also says that the vast majority of them are going to pan out in some form or fashion. This is not a talent issue. Yes, we could go to the transfer portal, maybe for a guy here, maybe a guy there. Somebody said, well, we don't have the scholarships to give out. From what I can remember, we have a scholarship to give to, Bear Bryant's great-grandson. I think we could have used that for some great player at some other position. I don't know. I'm just an idiot who knows nothing. But with that said, this is a development issue that I'm questioning across the board. Whose head rolls if this season doesn't turn around? Whose head rolls? I think specifically on the offensive side. You can name out somebody on the defensive side. I can't really think of anybody on the defensive side right now, unless the defense just goes to pure trash. But whose head rolls on the offensive side? Is it multiple heads? Is it one head? What do you see?
Well, I think first and foremost, and I don't like speculating too much on people losing their jobs, but I think if this offense, especially, with everything that's been promised and the hype coming into this season of Garrett Riley comes in and is like, oh man, everything, this team is having fun and they really are enjoying the scheme and we're going to be able to score points again. If this offense doesn't really continue to mature and continue to get better, I think you have to look at some of your position guys. I don't think Garrett Riley is going to be one of those guys that's being looked at, obviously, but the guys that are under him. I mean, we've talked about and Grafnar just mentioned him. That's probably the first name on everybody's list is Tyler Grisham. He's been in his position the longest of the. Wow, that is crazy. That's actually true, isn't it? Yeah. He's been in his position the longest since 2020. Man, that's unbelievable. It just
wild.
And he's been the one that's gotten the most flack over the years because of the drop off in wide receiver play. And no doubt, if the offense isn't as successful as we all hope it will be, I mean, the receiver production is going to be a main catalyst of that. And it would be the 4th year in a row that, well, I won't say, the 3rd year, because he did have Cornell Powell and Amari Rogers, and he had the leftovers of wide receiver U. Yep. But you already started to see kind of the decline. And then the last 3 years, the last 2 years, I mean, you've seen that significant drop off. And if you, for a 3rd consecutive year, you have subpar wide receiver play, I think a change is going to be made. At least you would hope so. I would think that Dabo is a man of his word. We know that he had that discussion after the Orange Bowl with the staff. He said, listen, I love you guys like family, but I'm not afraid to blow it all up if things don't get better. and I hope he's a man of his word. That's all. That's all I'm going to say. And I think Tyler Grisham is. I think he has a bright future. But if things continue to not be great, and these receivers don't get better, especially the ones that he recruited and brought into the program, yeah, I think there's a potential for change there.
What's your thoughts? Tiger Paul Craven?
Yeah, no, I agree with a lot of what Jordan Bowman said. And look, I take no pleasure talking about people's jobs and things like that. But at the end of the day, this is major college football, and we live in a results based environment. Okay, at work, if you underperform, guess what? Somebody's looking to replace you. You're going to get fired. You're going to get replaced. You're going to get demoted, so on and so forth. So. I take no joy in saying that people are on the quote unquote hot seat, or, people have the possibility of losing their job. Don't get me wrong. I love all these guys. I wish them all the success. But at the end of the day, it's a result based business. Okay. And if you have these top recruits in your wide receiver room and they're consistently underperforming, guess what? When the rubber meets the road, when the team is overall underperforming, you're going to be one of the guys that is looked at. And Tyler Grisham is definitely one of those guys that is going to be looked at. This wide receiver group has a third year of vast underperformance based on their talent level that they have on the roster. That's just the fact of the matter. And then probably Thomas Austin to a lesser degree. He has recruited really well. He has brought in a lot of good offensive linemen. But again, it's a result-based business. No one cares how good you recruited if they don't perform on the field. Okay? So those two guys are the first two that come to mind. For me, I don't wish their demise by any means. So, all of you Clemson fans that think everything is just, daisies and roses and everything's great, we're not saying that we want any of these guys fired tomorrow. It's just, if things were to go awry this season, those are the names that come to mind that would be first on the list, I think, for being reevaluated for their positions.
I was speaking with someone today. We were talking about just business and sales, and I'm in software sales, and I'm going to tell you that there has been times I've had great quarters, and to where I walk away like, wow, this is great. You get about 6 months in, 9 months in, maybe everybody's experiencing the same downswing because of economy or whatever. But people, they're like, look, we appreciate what you did 3 quarters ago, but man, we need something now. And I think it's really interesting how we look at football coaches. And I mean, we have the salaries. You can go Google the salaries of these guys. They're making, even the positions coach. And I have no problem with this. I've talked about this ad nauseum, and a lot of people get upset about it. I'm not jealous of what they make. Hey man, I hope to make a lot of money one day myself. The thing is, if you are not producing, if you have wide receivers who was catching the football better, and they just come out of high school, and in their second year they're in your program, they're dropping balls that a year ago they were catching, that's on you.
Yeah.
If it's just one guy, that's on him. That's on you. EJ Williams digressed. Ngata kind of digressed. We've seen Antonio Williams drop some passes this year that he would have never dropped last year. We've saw Bo Collins, who I'm a massive fan of, drop some passes. We've seen, which I know he's a tight end, but he still goes out and catches the ball. We've seen Brennan Stoll this year. You talked about the laziness. I'm just almost to the point with Brennan Stoll, I think that he knows that he's way better than what he has been, or he's way better versus how much they're using him. And he's just like, man, I just need to hit the transfer portal or something. Go somewhere they'll use me. It's going to work on these players. It's going to mess with their mentalities. And These coaches are being paid a lot of money to not produce. And everybody out there, I don't want anybody fired. Just want to make that clear. I echo what they say, but at the same time, if we all did what a lot of them are doing, especially on the offensive side of the ball, we would be axed, and we make way less money than they do. So, that's a good thought. In closing, because I know my kids probably just fell asleep. I don't know. Maybe he's downstairs rewiring the house. Knowing him, he probably is. And he's 7, and he did it somehow.
There you go.
I know you did it. You've already done a prediction. Have you done the prediction yet on your channel?
No, we'll do it on Thursday.
Yeah.
Okay, then I won't put you on that spot because I saved mine to the end as well, to the end of the week. Clemson wins this game. Clemson wins this game. They come out. Who do they have to pay attention to after this game?
Everyone.
I think everyone, because as exciting as a Clemson win would be, I'm going to try it, and I probably won't even hold myself to this, but I try to keep myself grounded after big wins, because if what we saw against Duke can happen one time, it can happen again. And so there's going to be a point, if Clemson does win this game, there's going to be another point in the schedule. There's going to be maybe multiple points in the schedule where things don't go as planned, and Clemson doesn't look, like a well-oiled machine, because again, this team is young. You have a young quarterback, you have young receivers, you have a young offensive line. Things are probably going to have, they're going to have issues again down the road. So I think Notre Dame is the obvious answer. But I think North Carolina is playing good football right now. They're coming to Death Valley. I think that's the good thing. You get a lot of your toughest tests at home. So I would look at those two. I would have said at NC State, but they don't look very good, man. I thought the marriage between Robert and I and Brennan Armstrong down there was going to pay better dividends, but so far they have not looked very good. Syracuse, I think, is a team that, and you travel up there this time. I think
that's the week after. That's the very next week.
Week after. Very next week. It's a nooner, thank God. So it's not going to be a night game in the dome. But they're playing really good football right now. I thought that team was going to be dead in the water with how much they lost to the transfer portal, to graduation. But Garrett Schrader is playing really good football right now. He's a load. And they've gotten better production out of their offensive line than I thought they would. That's going to be a tough test. They always get up for Clemson. So I think, Q's, Notre Dame, North Carolina, and then I think South Carolina, obviously the big, you got to win the rivalry game. And as shaky as South Carolina looked, through the first 3 weeks, or the first 2 weeks, they gave Georgia a hell of a game. And they can do it. If they can do it once, they could do it again. And Spencer Rattler, even with the subpar offensive line play, is playing some really good football, and his receivers are making some big plays. So you can't just chalk that one up as a W either. So you got to. I think those are the kind of the 4 teams I'm really looking at down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, Clemson cannot overlook anyone on the schedule. Jordan mentioned Syracuse next week. That's a team that, we have struggled with greatly in the past when they are far less talented and playing far, they're playing not as good as they're playing this season, I guess is the best way to put it, right? So, traveling up to the Carrier Dome, or what is formerly known as the Carrier Dome. I don't know what they call it now, but I'll always call it the Carrier Dome. The place that's named after an AC company and they don't have AC. Yep, that place. Yep. We struggle mightily against them for whatever reason. They seem to have our number, although they've only beat us one time. It's always a nail biter type of game. It's never a comfortable game when it comes to them. So that game definitely comes to mind for me. Notre Dame for sure. They dominated us on the line of scrimmage last season, and they look just as good, if not better, on the lines of scrimmage this season. And guess what? They have a better quarterback. So they have that going for them. North Carolina, you can never count them out with Drake May. They look to have somewhat of an improved defense. It's not great by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a little better than it's been in the past. So you got to assume that's a game that you're going to have to watch out for. Obviously, the South Carolina game, anytime you roll into a rivalry game, anything can happen. So there's a lot of games that Clemson still needs to pay attention to. I don't think this team has shown me that they are good enough to overlook any opponent, whether that be, Georgia Tech, North Carolina State. I honestly don't care who the opponent is. This team has yet to show me the ability to just, check the win box against anyone. They really haven't showed it to me. And although they've played really good the past 2 weeks, we know the talent gap in the past 2 weeks. Okay, so although it's encouraging to see our offense perform at a high level at certain points in those 2 games, it's not an end-all, be-all type of deal, right? We need to see it against better talent, against much higher caliber teams, and that starts this weekend. So if Clemson does sneak out a win, I think it'll be a close game. I don't think this will be a blowout either way, and I think it's just they got to keep their head down. They cannot get too high. This is not the Super Bowl. This is not the ACC championship game. This is a game in September in college football, which come November won't really mean that much, right? Because if you don't continue down the road of winning and taking care of business, guess what? No one will care come November that you beat Florida State. If you drop to, Syracuse and then you get, manhandled by Notre Dame, no one will care that Clemson beat Florida State. It won't matter. So they can't overlook any team. They can't take their foot off the pedal. They're going to have to continue to develop. And I think if they do, we could be a much better team come the end of the season if they continue to develop, because we've seen Cade already take steps forward in the first 3 weeks of the season, right? Although he's still making some mistakes, they are becoming less and less, right? Last week we didn't turn the ball over. That's great, right? So if we can continue that into this game, we definitely can't turn the ball over against Florida State. You lose the turnover margin against Florida State, we ain't winning this game. No chance. Not even close. We'll get blown out if we turn the ball over multiple times against Florida State.
To me, the overall idea is aggression here.
Yep.
Being extremely aggressive. We're coming out here. This is our field. This is our season. Yeah, we messed up in Durham. We learned from it. We're pulling things together. We look at one another and we go, hold on, you were at that elite camp in high school and you were highly recruited and I was highly recruited. Dude, what's going on, man? And we go out there and we take over. I just want to say a very special thank you to Athens Tiger for becoming a YouTube member. Thank you so much for supporting the Not Bobby Durkins channel. See, it was easy, and everybody who's on here, 109 people watching. Man, thank you so much for joining us.
Must be rough.
I hope he's in Athens, Ohio, and not Athens, Georgia. Because
yeah,
if you are,
I was about to say,
I'm praying for you, brother.
It must be rough living around all those Bulldogs over there, man. That's rough, dude.
That is rough, but
shout out to you, dude.
Yeah. You get our Soldier of the Week award. Thank you for becoming a member. Closing down here, and everybody just hang around for just a second. Everybody who's watching, I would kind of give you a closing thought. So wasn't that Jerry Springer who did that? I feel really weird. All of a sudden, Jordan and Tiger Paul Craven start fighting each other. You're not the father. There's some people on here that's watching right now. They're so young. They're like,
Jerry Springer.
Was that wrestling? Yeah, kind of.
A little bit, yeah.
Imagine determining a paternity test mixed with wrestling.
Yeah, that was
an old man.
That was daytime wrestling before the WWE came on. WWE came on at night. Daytime wrestling was Jerry Springer.
It really was. And so, oh my God, yeah. Closing thoughts on this, guys, and I believe you'll agree with it. Clemson has a beautiful opportunity here, folks. If you watch my show, you know that I've called Clemson out big time. People are calling me Mr. Pessimist. I always talk about what's wrong. Okay. All right. That's fine. But I'm going to give you something that I think we can all agree with, no matter where you stand on this Clemson argument within the Clemson family. Clemson has a beautiful opportunity to turn around, show us, yes, we learn from what happened, play Florida State, beat Florida State. Now, this Syracuse game is a trap game. Remember last year, they were 6-0 when they played Clemson. When they played Clemson, they were ranked what? Number 14. Clemson was ranked 5. Now, when Clemson beat them, that was the beginning of a 6-game skid. Also, remember that all ACC tight end Gadsden, he is out for the season. I hate that for him. That guy's a baller. But you do have Notre Dame. Miami is showing some really good signs that they're actually, I'm not going to say back, but they're playing competitive football. I mean, South Carolina's going to play us hard this year. I despise the Gamecocks. Spencer Rattler's playing really well. He's playing really well. Mad respect to him for getting sacked 9 times. He didn't get up grumbling and crying and woe is me. He just kept balling. They're going to play us hard. And I think there's some teams out there who are looking to try to pay us back a little bit for the dominance we've had. Clemson, you have the talent. My question is, does the coaches have the game plan, and are they getting them ready? That, to me, that's more where I'm at right now. Where's the coaches at? Because we have the dogs to do this, but you have a beautiful opportunity, and I hope you seize it. I know they hope you seize it. Jordan, Tiger Paul Craven, thanks for coming on the show. Thank you for being on here for an hour and a half.
Yes, sir.
Anytime. Yeah.
Everybody go. No, go ahead, Jordan. I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying, yeah, I always enjoy coming on here. Well, this is the second time, but it's always a great opportunity. And, I love hanging out with you guys. So this didn't even feel like an hour and a half to me.
Yeah. Super, super quick.
Well, thank you for coming on. Everybody go over to the Voice of College Football Clemson channel. You have Jordan Bowman and Tiger Paul Craven. They are running the thing. No, listen, notice Mark didn't ask me. Did you notice that? Mark didn't trust me. I think he was worried that Durkins might show up. I don't blame him.
Probably.
But go check these guys out. Please tell them that you saw them on this show. It is fantastic. I want to thank the sponsor of the show, 4-Putt Carts, beverage cart service for golf courses. Whether you have a cart service or not, you still need to get these guys involved. They're incredible. Also for events, go check them out. Reach out to me, and I'll pass along your information. Also, if you have not subscribed, I have 100 people in here watching right now. Listen to me, 100 people. Hit the thumbs up. And if you hadn't already, hit the subscribe if you hadn't already. Also, it's free. So if you want to support the channel on a monthly basis, $3 or $5 tiers, I do appreciate that. Gentlemen, it's good to see you. I look forward to seeing your prediction. I'll have my Clemson Florida State prediction as we get closer to the game. Folks, as always, it's always good to be a Tiger. You take care of yourself. I'll catch you sometime this week. Catch these guys on their show. Let them know that you saw them here. Y'all have a good rest of the week. Bye-bye.
Go Tigers.